Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Tag Team, the Pokemon Trading Card Game's premier podcasting duo. My name is Riley Holbert, joined by my good friend JW Creewall. JW, how's it hanging, man?
It is hanging pretty well, Riley. I'm getting ready for my big vacation.
Yeah?
Yeah, we are going to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan for a week. Next week, I will be phoneless, Twitterless, Instagram. I don't really use Instagram.
Do you even have an
Facebookless.
Instagram?
Bro, I do have an Instagram, but I I don't know how to utilize Instagram. Instagram is a very foreign. I just recently learned how to use Twitter,
I don't
and
think that's true.
well, I use it appropriately.
Sure.
um yeah, so use it appropriately. But for Instagram, I just don't know what I would put. I did create an Instagram with the idea that I would like post like card pictures because apparently Instagram is a really good way to connect with people. I don't know, people
It
just
is. It's
like
a
high
big, like,
quality.
card seller market as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I just don't. I don't know. I don't. Discord. I don't really understand
No,
that
no,
much.
you don't.
Um. So it's a mess over here in Flex Daddy land.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this on the cast, but one of my favorite things is when you and Andrew are trying to get a stream going and like need to figure out how Discord works.
To me, the Discord interface just isn't intuitive,
It is so intuitive, and
bro.
the best
Okay,
part though
maybe
is I'll be
for
at work. It'll be like 8 a.m. I'm at work, and I'll see posts on my phone like of you and Andrew trying to get Discord to work, like in the Discord chat, and I'll pop in the Discord chat. This is little insider info for all the listeners. So we have like a Discord channel that all of our like friend group uses, and there's a ton of voice channels in it. And one of them I specifically made for JW and Andrew to use while streaming because it has a two-person limit on the voice channel, so no one can like pop in there and mess with them. They have literally never used it. I every time I pop, except for one time, and I don't know how you even do that. How do you get there
bruh,
precisely one time and never use it again?
bruh, we did it. We did it that one time. Yeah, we're fine. We're fine. We're learning. We're learning. I mean, you can teach an old dog new tricks,
It takes a while
and
though.
no, it does. I mean, because we're set in our ways. I when I grew up, I had to fight for my 30 minutes of AOL Messenger
Yeah.
every night. You know, I had to use dial up. It's a different world. Like I grew up before the internet, so
Not really.
I mean, really, bro. Like we had a computer
You're
class, but
acting
it was
like you're
mostly
ancient compared to me. You're just
we had a
you're
we
just
had a
not
computer
good at
class, but it was mostly
computers.
just play like I Spy Haunted House on the computer for
Yeah.
45 minutes. Like we didn't really do anything in computer class.
You're like not even that much older than me, and you're acting like you're like 5,000 years old.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. We had dial up. It's a different world. It's a different
Yeah.
time. 27 years ago.
I mean, I was 2 years old and playing Freddy the Fish. Straight out of the womb.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
ever play Freddy Fish?
No.
That whole genre, like the Freddy Fish and the Pajama Sams and
I was just gonna bring up Pajama Sam. So they're the
yeah.
same idea.
It
Same
occupies the
company.
same space. I don't know if it's the
Okay.
same company.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there's
I
also the
loved
the Putt Putt as well.
I loved Pajama Sam.
Pajama Sam was good. Yeah, I sometimes I like want to go back and like find those games. I haven't found like a good resource for that. So
There was one that I really used to like where it was like they were adventurers, and it was this adventure game, but it scaled. So there was like a first grade through like a 12th grade or something, but you were going on different adventures every grade. And it was something about, I remember the one that I was in, I think it was like this volcano type thing. I really miss it because I remember having a really good time and actually learning something from it.
yeah,
But my favorite game, it was like a flash game. I remember, I think it was on, Funny Junk or something,
yeah.
and it was this monkey pilot game, and you use the arrow keys and you control your monkey and he's in a spaceship,
Uh-huh.
and he glides around, and you're trying to avoid the spikes and land your monkey
I don't know
on
what
the
you're talking
platform.
about.
Wait, do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
Okay, chat, help me out. What am I talking about here? What's the monkey game?
I will say though, you know, Discord, it is a little new age, but you are young enough to occupy that age group.
Monkey Lander, bro.
Monkey
Monkey
Lander.
Lander.
Monkey Lander. Who
Mini clip. Wow. Okay, we might
Yeah,
have to play
mini
this
clip
on
was
stream.
was quite the genre. What I was gonna say is my flash game of choice, kind of almost like an ancestor to Discord in a way, was Club Penguin. You just gaming
Uh,
with the boys and chatting on the client, like in a
sure.
way, like occupied the same realm.
Sure. My browser game of choice was Unreal Tournament, or my computer game of choice
Yeah,
was Unreal
Unreal
Tournament.
Tournament and Quake and all that.
That was amazing.
Yeah, I
That was an
never
amazing
I
game.
never played any of that stuff. So yeah, maybe you
Really?
did just
Okay.
occupy a completely different space than me.
It's like we lived on two different Earths.
Yeah, it really is, man. It really is. So, diving into it though, I think we have some cool updates on the Players' Cup going on. Obviously, the second week just happened, and players continue to advance. Honestly, the meta stayed about the same in terms of representation. I think there
Yeah.
are some notable callouts. So, your deck is locked in, right, over the course of the event, like the whole way through, week 1 and week 2. Because it's one
I
double elimination tournament, is it not?
I was gonna say I'm pretty sure it is locked
Yeah.
in.
So actually, with the way you were talking earlier, I was right to start, wasn't I?
Yeah, I guess you were. Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
you were. Sure.
Okay. So for context, we were looking at the charts that Pokemon TCG had tweeted out. Uh,
Because that's the only
it's like the
numbers that
only
we have.
insight we have into the Players' Cup, like
Um,
as at macro level. And we were talking about some of the trends between chart to chart, and we're like mildly debating about whether it represented like success or representation. But now
right.
that we're talking about it more, I think they actually are the same thing in a
Right.
way.
Yeah, you're right.
Um,
You're right.
so let's dive into it. So in week 1, we saw some, I don't know, about standard stats, probably about what you'd expect. Pretty in line with what we said would be the representation of these decks. So you have Pikarom and Dragapult both occupying about 20 to 25%. Um, the next most popular deck being Zacian variants combo and ADP occupying
Mhm.
another like 17%. And then you had Blacephalon taking 13, and then just the rest of the decks. I guess Obstagoon, or no, that's just other. Yeah, so everything else just occupied the rest of the meta. So Mewtwo
Mhm.
and other Zacian variants and Stall
Sure.
decks and Spiritomb, stuff we all know and love. Um, week 2 was a little more concentrated, which is in some ways to be expected as you go over the course of a tournament. Like the best deck will separate itself.
Right.
Pikarom saw a pretty massive surge in popularity between week 1 and week 2. Dragapult saw a slight increase going from 23 to 25. I would say that's, in macro terms, it's probably about the same.
Yeah.
Pikarom, though, jumping from 19 to 26%. That's a lot of success for Pikarom players at this event.
Yeah. It is. It is. I think it speaks to the consistency of the deck. You look at just the amount of things that you need to do and what you can accomplish on a first turn. I think like Pikarom has maybe the best early game of any of these decks. You look
Yeah.
at
Most
ADP
explosive
variants
for
and like
sure.
they're gonna just pass a turn. That's almost a guarantee with most of the Zacian decks. Same with like a Blacephalon, like they're gonna pass a turn, maybe 2, maybe even 3. And then obviously Dragapult, like you're giving up that first turn. Your best first turn that you could possibly get with Dragapult is attach pass. And so you look at Pikarom and it has this insane turn 1 potential. And so I think you look at that and it makes a lot of sense why it did so well and why it performed well, into the second week of competition.
Yeah, I mean, it really drives home the same kind of things that we've been talking about Pikarom just being consistent, about being a beast and really putting pressure on decks so fast that, especially in a double elimination style tournament where you can't afford to lose really, um,
Mhm.
it's just a really solid choice for that event.
Right.
So it doesn't surprise me at all to see Pikarom be overrepresented overrepresented in the second week relative to the first, um, just because it's so consistent that more players will likely succeed on average with Pikarom relative to other decks. Maybe it has like a lower ceiling. I don't really think it has that much lower of a ceiling.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that, but I definitely think that some lists were pretty interesting. I did see a few of the lists. I can't remember who this speaks to. What Wallace is asking in the chat. This speaks to, do we know who made it? And Pokemon hasn't publicly put out deck lists or players that finished in the top. Moving on
Right.
to the next week of competition. But yeah, I've seen some of the lists from players in certain areas, and just like the ways that you can construct Pikarom have been really cool. And I've seen lists with 4 tag calls. I've seen a lot of lists that have shifted away from the 2 Boltund, going down to just 1, having that as kind of your late game finisher, but kind of relegating it to more of a Raichu spot where it's like you're not
Yeah.
really relying on Boltund to win you the game, but it's just that auxiliary attacker that you have. So a lot of I would say from some of the lists that I've seen, like even still, there's some innovation to be had with the Pikachu and Zekrom lists.
Yeah, and Pikarom is just a great deck to innovate with because it's got such a simple core to it that you can pretty much fill the void with whatever else you want. I mean,
Yep.
people even realistically can play decks like Green's Pikarom, which it sounds silly at times, but other times you
Sure.
see people like doing well with it, at least
Sure.
relatively speaking. Um, so at the end of the day, Pikarom is just such a simple deck that it'll find this consistent success time
Yeah.
after time. I mean, realistically, since Team Up came out, Pikarom has been the most consistently played deck.
Yeah, and I mean it's cool. You can go Jirachi, you can go no Jirachi, you can go
Yeah,
Greens, you can go Volkner, you can go heavy Dedenne, you can go light Dedenne. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can heavy tag call, no tag call. I mean, there's just so many ways that you can play the deck that you can really adapt it to what you feel kind of fits your needs, fits your metagame, fits the way that you conceptualize the deck. That's really great. So I think we were talking about this heading into the Players Cup, that we feel Pikachu and Zekrom was just going to be a general choice for that early game aggression that it can provide, the kind of general consistency I would say that it has in relation to a lot of the other decks, and kind of the ease of acquiring cards for someone that maybe was generating a lot of tickets but didn't have a tier 1 deck. I mean, I think that was, I don't want to say that that's a lot of players, but certainly there are those players that have likely advanced past week 2 that just maybe played a lot of TCGO but didn't really use meta decks, and like maybe had to turn to something a little bit more
yeah,
standardized. So for those reasons, you're looking at Pikachu and Zekrom as being a really strong choice heading into the Players Cup and proving us right.
yeah. And one thing I do find interesting is how centralized this meta really got in the second week of play. We saw all of the niche decks. So if you take all of the Zacian variants, the Blacephalons, the Dragapults, and the Pikachus, they took up more of a meta at large, and then the rest of the meta keeps shrinking. One thing I found especially interesting was the other decks, which comprised a huge amount of things, I'm sure, just shrink to 2/3 of what it was before. So
Hmm.
that's a pretty
Mhm.
substantial dip. Um, I mean, to me, what that says is the meta is just very centralized right now.
Mhm.
The decks are clearly defined as being the best decks, and if you're playing, it's like kind of one of those weird metas where it's like if you're playing outside these like top 4 decks, it's almost like you're trolling yourself.
Right, right. Well, and you look at it, I mean, they're so far and away better in my opinion than a
Yeah,
lot of the other decks. Like just the since I've played, like we've never, well, I don't want to say never, but I haven't really seen this kind of quality across the board from the top 4 decks, just being head and shoulders really in my eyes above the rest of the field. Like it's almost not even close, and a lot of times it's not even fair. You look at like counter decks like Obstagoon, where the most played deck has like a reasonable shot at beating Obstagoon. Pikarom like has a reasonable shot at beating Obstagoon in any given matchup, and that's just wild. Like it just takes there aren't even
Yeah.
counters to the best decks that reliably win. So these top 4 decks being, Pikarom, Dragapult, Blacephalon, and then a Zacian variant, really taking control, like you said, of the metagame. And there's no reason to really play anything else.
Yeah. And, if you look at the numbers in that kind of way, I think a lot of metas will paint a similar story where there's, clearly some better decks. And that's just the nature of card games, right? I think Pokemon's actually done a relatively good job of spreading the love. Like, right?
Yeah.
I would say like 4 variants of decks being like the main meta is a pretty reasonable amount. Like,
Yeah.
when you look at things like other card games, Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic, they've had a lot of metas recently, even where it's been 1 deck and that's it.
Sure. Sure.
Maybe 2. So, I like to give Pokemon its credit, but the meta is fairly centralized. And when you have such a diverse array of decks and a cast of characters like Pokemon, and I think that almost is what makes a centralized meta in Pokemon feel like a little worse, just because there's so many like beloved characters in the series that like when you don't get to use your favorite ones, it just feels kind of bad.
Although, to be fair, counterpoint, Pokemon is able to double up or sometimes triple up with the tag team cards.
Well, they used to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Now those are canceled.
Right. Exactly.
So,
another victim of 2020.
Cancel culture. Yeah. There goes the tag teams. Said some mean things on Twitter.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, I think it's probably a fine direction. Like, the meta is probably not ridiculously unhealthy. Can't say I'm a huge fan of exactly where it is right now, though. Just the game as a whole. And we've talked about this before on the cast and off. I don't like these gigantic Pokemon just swinging back for multiple prizes at each other all the time.
Yeah.
Especially as I've played more and more of these old formats, like using Tabletop Simulator and just like, talking with my friends online. I really prefer when the game takes a slower stance and, you're forced to evolve and route your prizes really methodically. I will say what this meta has done better than more recent ones is there's less one-shotting. Outside of like Blacephalon, there's not really much one-shotting going on. I guess Zacian is like one-shotting things for 3 prizes on
certain
the bench.
Things. Yeah, sure.
But, I think at least the concept of multi-hit KOs is a good direction. But, like, when I think of the most fun metas to play, I think of ones where you actually have to take 6 prize cards, and you have to figure out how you're going to do that.
6 attacks, you mean? Because, I mean, obviously, we're taking
6 prize cards on 6 Pokemon.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite metas to play.
Yeah.
By far and away, I really enjoy like figuring out those routes, thinking about resources, and none of that stuff really feels like it comes to mind. I mean, Blacephalon is the only deck that I think really devotes brain power to resources, and it's only because it tosses them all away in the process of one-shotting.
Yeah, right. And I think something that some of the older formats do really well, also, at least in the GX era, is kind of you contrast like this very powerful Pokemon with its very average and weak basic. And so there's some opportunity to kind of cut the head off before the damage can be done, in a sense. Like you can really get after the Zoruas because when they evolve into Zoroark, it's going to be, a lot harder and they get really strong, but they're kind of vulnerable for that one turn. And we don't really see that a ton in this metagame.
Yeah, it's
where
almost
there's that vulnerability where you can really disrupt an opponent before they can get going.
Well, what I was gonna say is besides the Zacian decks that take multiple extra prizes, the 2 prize versus the 3 prize for some of those Vs and VMAXs doesn't really make a difference in some cases.
Yeah.
You're still gonna have to take either 2 or 3 knockouts depending on which one you're KOing. So
yeah,
it just kind of feels rough. And another thing, actually, looping back to GXs, and we talked about this last week, I think, but, being able to control, like, the prizes on your board a little more, both in the even and odd direction. So if you want to only have one prize on your board with the GX deck, you can do that. Just
Yeah.
have your basics fill the board. If you want to only have 2 prizers, that's also a thing. Like if your opponent's taking
Right.
5 prizes, you just evolve all your Zaruas, like put your Lele down to fill your bench, and now you have these big guys that you need to take an extra prize on and play the 7 prize game. Like,
Yep.
I feel like a lot of this nuance is just not here right now. And I don't know what necessarily has caused it, but it feels less satisfying to me. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I wonder if there were any bans that, I mean, just this is all like hypothetical and like retrospect. Like if there was a ban that you could make to this metagame, do you think that there is a ban that would solve the problems? And if there is, what would you ban?
Not really. I mean, if you had to ban anything, it would probably be ADP, just because it stifles out all the 1 prize decks. But I feel like Dragapult almost kind of does the same thing.
Yeah.
In a different way. It takes a different route to also choking out like smaller decks.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I have a good answer. I think one of the and to Pokemon's credit, one of the better things about Pokemon that Pokemon and Magic both share is the rotation system. And in theory, the rotation system allows you to dial back the power level of the format, because you can print some cards that will temporarily be crap, and then you rotate out the cards that are overpowered, and then the game is like in a better state again. What I don't think is happening, though, is I don't think Pokemon actually takes advantage of the system that is put in place for itself. Like rotation has allowed them to experiment with things, like we did tag teams for a rotation, and now we're doing Vs and Vmaxes for a rotation. Who knows what's the next mechanic we'll do? But instead of like using that as opportunities to like move the power level up and down, it just keeps going up, which isn't, in my opinion, the way to handle it. Like why even have a rotation if the power level of the cards is just going to get higher and higher?
Right. Exactly. That's a really, really good point. And you would like to see Pokemon kind of like move in that middle ground, maybe trend upwards, because generally like more HP and more power is like going to sell more cards. I think that's just the general thought. Like you look at it, a card that has 2 Pokemon on it, and that's cooler than a card that just has 1 Pokemon on it, or a card that does
tag teams were
insane
cool.
amount of damage.
It's
just better than a card that doesn't. But you would like to see the balance in a way that things could come back and things can dial back. And it does feel like we're on this runaway train, in a sense that we're kind of careening off and like going upwards at this exponential rate. Do you think that a more VMAX dominated metagame will solve any of these issues that we're talking about with this current meta?
I mean, I definitely think VMAXs were a better idea than tag teams in terms of like game balance. I think tag teams were cooler cards. But
sure.
I think VMAXs are potentially better designed cards. And
that comes back to what we were talking about with like this GX era where you could evolve, again, going back to like Zorua to Zoroark, it's a better kind of idea there where you have to choose whether or not to evolve your VMAX or not. But
I don't think VMAXs are as good as the evolving GXs. I think evolving GXs are probably one of the better mechanics they've done in the last few years. And on the whole, I think Black and White was really the turning point where afterwards things started to really ramp up. So, it's hard to say right now. None of the VMAXs are like so insane that they, just destroy everything and blow everything out of the water. Dragapult's really the only one that has that problem, I guess, if you want to call it that. So I think VMAXs have the potential to like slow the game a little bit. But, we still run into the same problem where we have gigantic Pokemon that give multiple prizes. And I think the way that Pokemon is designing their cards, they've kind of rabbit-holed themselves, where now you keep digging deeper and deeper as, like, your mechanism to solve the problem. And it extends beyond the multi-prize Pokemon, too, right? Because the single-prize Pokemon have to do more damage and have more HP to deal with these giant Pokemon to even be a viable thing at all.
Right.
And so, because the single prize Pokemon are also escalating, like there's no basis to de-escalate the problem.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, you could see, or at least I can see in the current meta where they did try to have that balance, and that comes in the form of Blacephalon and Spiritomb. I mean, those are our prominent one prizers, but you can see there kind of the gears turning. I think, really with card design and focus and things like this. So Blacephalon just being able to have that one shot potential, but maybe not as cost efficient in those one prize matchups. Like you look at the Blacephalon versus Malamar matchup when that was a thing, and Blacephalon just couldn't even compete really. And so I felt like Blacephalon, love it or hate it, is this kind of savior of this format, in the sense that it does allow for, if certain things were banned, or certain things weren't created, like it would allow for maybe a little more healthy of a metagame.
I don't know. I say maybe, but if we live in a world where Baby Blacephalon is currently the only viable single prize archetype, like maybe Blacephalon itself is just also a problematic card,
But I mean, in my opinion, it really isn't. Like you need so many pieces to combo well with Baby Blacephalon. I mean, they gave it a lot of tools, so okay, there's that. Like it's pretty insane the amount of stuff you can do with a Baby Blacephalon deck. But you do need a lot of combo pieces in any one turn, and I think that's fairly reasonable to give that kind of card those amount of tools against what it has to go against in these VMAX and tag team Pokemon.
Yeah, I guess I would agree more if there were like actual one prize archetypes that would punish the cost inefficiency of it.
Well, that's why I'm saying, like, when you look back at the format where Blacephalon and like a deck like Malamar were two big contenders, you couldn't take a Blacephalon deck to a tournament that had Malamar because it just wouldn't perform well. Like the ratio of energy to prizes was just too bad for the Blacephalon player. And so like you see ADP kind of stifling out, and Zacian Prism combo Zacian kind of stifling out those one prize decks like a Malamar. So I don't know. And that kind of rotates back to what you were talking about. Maybe if you ban an ADP or something, then you have like a rise or resurgence of a deck like Malamar or something. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we had to point to one card that is strangling the meta at all, I think it's probably ADP. Just by virtue of his existence, it makes.
Yeah.
But I think Dragapult, again, reiterating, I think Dragapult will have a similar effect where it can continue to spread damage, especially like having an evolving one prize deck against Dragapult. Like that sounds horrible.
Sure.
Yeah. Imagine whiffing rare candy against Dragapult, man. That sounds awful. Like.
Yeah. Yeah, you're definitely gonna have a bad time.
I don't know. I think the problem is, even though rotation in theory allows you to dial back power levels, to do that, you need to print sets of unsatisfying cards. Like the cards need to be substantially weaker for multiple sets in a row, which means that the meta won't change for the duration of those sets being added to the game. You know what I'm saying? So and not only that, like from a sales perspective, like if I'm a businessman trying to sell my Pokemon cards, I don't want to print cards that are worse. Who's gonna buy those?
Right. So right. I mean, it's definitely a tough spot. I feel like just in general for card games, like you said, like they're stuck between this. Okay, how do you we go from these GXs that are pretty strong compared to what we had before, and then okay, now we go into tag teams, and then okay, now we have VMAXs, and it's like the HP gets higher and the attacks get more crazy, and like I don't know, I'm a little fearful about what happens next.
Yeah, the next thing.
if we think about whether it be a new mechanic or just more Pokemon VMAX, like I'm gotta say a little bit concerned about what we will see in the next year or two when the new mechanics come out, because on the current trend, we're seeing in post rotation, at least that kind of testing ground, that there aren't really a ton of viable, certainly not a ton of viable one prize decks. I think it is going to be centered a lot around the VMAX Pokemon, and just what does that mean for the game, and does that make the game any more or less fun? And I think the answer is less fun. I'm optimistic, but it's just you look past that too, and just thinking about the power creep and where it could take us, and it's pretty scary.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I really don't want to see the day where four prize Pokemon get printed.
Yeah.
Eventually, or just have a five prize Pokemon. You
Or like a
KO
like a six prize. I mean, realistically, like a six prize Pokemon. You knock this one out. Like it'd be incorporated like maybe with the raid mechanic, where you just have this massive Gigantamax, and it takes you knock it out and it takes all six prizes. It has like 1,000 health or something. I mean that
Yeah.
seems something very reasonable that could happen.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it could be like a legend kind of card where you like take two cards and make it one. Oh god,
Yeah.
I'm giving them an idea,
We'll cut that in post.
I could see I could like see that. It is the worst part, like a two-part, really nice hollow card that is worth like six prizes.
And it has like 700 health. Yeah. Yeah.
I regret even like saying it and bringing
Speaking it into existence.
into the sphere of my existence. So
Yeah.
massive regrets there. That's not to say I hate Pokemon. Like, Pokemon is still my favorite card game to play. It's still my favorite game. It's still my favorite series. I think it's a natural problem that card games run into, and it's a really hard one to manage.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a solution fundamentally to the problem of balancing card games.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it comes down to, I think one thing that we're looking at, like again in this post-rotation metagame, is like you're not really something that we've had in the past that you're not seeing heading into the future are these counter cards. These have balanced the game throughout my 10 years in the game, where it's like, if your Pokemon was knocked out, then you do an additional amount of damage, like a retaliate kind of attack, or a copy kind of attack that would hit a Pokemon for weakness. And they're a little bit more splashable. I think about things like Mimikyu or Terrakion or Druddigon, if anyone remembers that from like 5 or 6 years ago. But these kind of retaliate attacks that can be powered up fairly efficiently, counter gain, or like a double colorless, or an energy and some way to accelerate. But just being able to hit those weaknesses that otherwise that deck couldn't hit, to keep the deck alive in certain matchups that it otherwise wouldn't have the ability to overcome. And that's something that I'm seeing here in this Sword and Shield era of cards that is lacking. Like, we really aren't seeing these kind of retaliate attacks being printed, or at least splashable attackers. And when you consider that the primary mechanic that seems to be pushed out now is like these VMAXs, like you kind of need to hit for weakness to one-shot them.
Yeah.
It's tough when you don't have these retaliate attacks, because it means that only a specific archetype can counteract, the top archetype. And that's a little bit concerning to me as well.
I would counterpoint that in saying that I don't think it would be healthy to have very efficient attackers able to one-hit KO VMAX Pokemon.
Okay.
Like a basic one prizer being able to one-hit KO a VMAX, I don't think is any healthier than what VMAXs are already causing.
Interesting. Okay, I just elaborate more on that.
I mean, when you think realistically, what we want out of the game is we want it to be slower, and by introducing just a bunch of one prize Pokemon that can one hit KO anything, like these VMAXs are probably not going to go anywhere regardless, but instead we just have like these crappy counter Pokemon that just make everything feel horrible to play, and you're giving up so much. It's not like Terrakion one hit KOing a Darkrai and giving up 2 prizes. This is half of your prize cards that you're just giving up immediately for a one prize thing. And I think Buzzwole is probably one of the better examples of how to handle that, where it's on a
just
very
gives you one
specific
turn. Well,
turn,
okay, I guess,
and you play around it.
Sure, and sure, and that would be again something that I'm throwing out into the air here as just something that I am not seeing with the card design of Sword and Shield on. I'm not seeing these kinds of counter cards like a Buzzwole. That's a great example, actually, of a very balanced card where it's like insanely powerful on like one turn. You
Balance
know,
post strong energy.
yeah, right, right. But I don't know, and maybe there are those kinds of cards that I'm missing, but I just haven't seen that from this Sword and Shield block on, and it kind of concerns me that there aren't these kinds of cards that do significant damage to VMAXs for a splashable cost.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general I'd like to see more like one prize boxy kind of decks be a thing. We were talking just yesterday in our group chat about like Rayquaza and the 2018 Worlds meta and Buzzgarb Shrine, and I think Buzzgarb Shrine, while also being kind of an oppressive deck, was a good example of like a one prize toolboxy kind of deck. You use your rainbows and your attackers, and you build a toolbox to deal with the
this
meta.
is 2018 Worlds for those of you.
And of course, like Buzzgarb Shrine also bled well into the 2018-19 season. So I think that's a good example of like what a one prize countery kind of style deck would look like. Obviously it's not the most consistent deck just by virtue of being what it is, like a special energy reliant one prize deck, but it was very powerful. It dealt with the meta well, but it dealt with the meta in specific ways. Like the meta was very item heavy, like Rayquaza decks, so the Garbodors are really good against that. The combination of Sledgehammer and Ability Lock was super good against Zoroark. It was just that's like, in my mind, that's the kind of decks I want to see more of now.
Sure.
And as someone who really thought Buzzgarb Shrine was horrible and oppressive to play against in the early 2018-19 season, I would rather have more decks like that force you to think about how you're playing the game.
Yeah, and that is true. It's true. You did have to think about, okay, when do I want to evolve? And like in a split evolution tree, that deck played one. So when do I want to evolve into my Trashalanche Garbodor? And when do I want to evolve into my, Ability Lock Garbodor? And when do I want to attack with this Pokemon versus this other Pokemon? And like, do I want to bench something early if I know that it could get knocked out? And that's my only chance to, swing this matchup. And yeah, there were a lot of thoughts that went into that deck, and I see your point there in that this kind of, maybe it's not a specific like retaliate style where it's like an immediate one shot on a high HP Pokemon, but it is kind of this thinking deck that is based around basic or stage ones that only give up one prize. Where you still had to do the thinking, you still had to do the calculating, the routes, the management, all this kind of stuff to put you in a position to win. But it wasn't as, I guess, oppressive as my initial idea, where it's just like, oh, you knocked me out, and then, all right, I'll just attach my one energy and blow you up. That could get hairy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think when I picture a healthier game, I think more turns is better. I think like slower methodical gameplay is better. Like, yes, VMAXs kind of have more methodical gameplay into each other, but there's so little choice in what you're doing with a VMAX. Like a lot of them have one attack. I think Dragapult's one of the few that has two. And besides that, like,
and there's like no real reason that you would want to use Shred over the other attack.
It's just,
like it's not like you're not really making a choice.
Yeah. You use Shred if you have one energy, and you use Max Phantom if you have two.
Right.
So that's that. So I would like to see more stuff like that. It's more of a toolbox, more variety of attackers, more turns. I think that's where the skill expression is, right? Like the more turns a game takes, the more actions that are going on, and I'm disincluding Stall from that particular conversation. Not that Stall is a no-skill deck, but like the more methodical gameplay that goes into it, the better players will succeed, the more fun the game is, because you're actually thinking about what's going on.
And I will kind of it's not really a counter, but it's just saying that the skill right now, you're saying that the skill is removed from the in-game play, or being lessened from the in-game play. I would agree. I think that skill now is shifted, how much of it is up for debate and whether or not it's like a very large shift, but a lot of that skill shift is going towards the deck building I don't think
Yes
that
and
is.
no. I mean, the problem I have with deck building being the main source of skill expression is that anyone can get a good list.
Yeah,
You know, and not just like not anyone can make a good list, but anyone can get a good list. You
sure,
know, whether
sure.
from an article or from a YouTube video or someone shares it to them, and they and then from there the gameplay is so straightforward. You know that, and I don't want to. This isn't me like insulting anyone or like trying to frame the gameplay as being zero skill right now because obviously it's not. Like you still see players consistently doing well right now.
Yeah.
It just feels less so to me than in times that was more methodical and slow.
Mhm. Sure. Sure. And yeah, I don't know quite what to say to that, except, yeah, I would say that, we still have, or we should still have innovative deck lists coming out, post rotation, that just things that we haven't thought of that maybe just shake up the whole idea of what we're thinking post rotation can be. We have talked a lot about this format, and we'll still talk a little bit more about this format here in the next couple of weeks as we just move into this weird kind of bridge time between current format and the new set and post rotation. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Maybe there is some kind of combination of cards that does come out that is exactly what we're talking about here. Like I'm thinking about, like a Crabominable being just one of these Pokemon that I had no idea it existed, and I had no idea that it could, see any play. And obviously, it has some really good use. And maybe there's some deck that can use these kinds of attackers that we're just not even thinking of, that kind of flips the meta on its head. Doesn't appear to be that way from all the studying that I've done on post rotation, all the stuff that I've seen
The studying.
from players, and all the games that I've tested, and all the thought that I put into it. But you never know. You never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and I'll reemphasize this is not us waving the flag of defeat. We're
Right.
still in it. We still love the game. We just would love to see it be better because we love the game.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where it comes from.
Sure.
I'd love to answer some of these questions, at least talk through them in chat.
Yeah.
Andrew Dank is asking, has stall and control all but died out? I mean, not necessarily died out, but it's on a pretty low point right now. I mean, the stall decks, they have to hit hammers to succeed against stuff like Dragapult and ADP consistently, especially with the addition of Boss's Orders into the meta. So it's just in a tough spot, and I don't think there's a reason to put yourself in that tough spot willingly when you could just play one of the better decks.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think just to wrap up and we can answer obviously more questions after this, but just to wrap up my thoughts on this format is, I feel like we are going to, well, I know I will in a couple years. I may be kind of low on this format, like how excited I am about this current format, but I think in a couple years, when we go back and revisit this format, I think we will find that there was enough diversity and enough interplay amongst the top decks to make it an interesting format in retrospect. I think going through it right now, or seeing just, it's kind of the same stuff being rehashed. But I think going back, we'll look at this metagame and say, you know what, it really wasn't all that bad. There was a lot of different options that you could do in terms of deck building, and a lot of different decks that you could play that all kind of had relatively decent matchups with one another. Certainly there were some, certainly there were some matchups that, are just blowouts, but I think generally speaking, you have interesting gameplay amongst the top, 5 decks. And so I'm going to like this format, I think, in a couple years when we go back and play old formats.
I mean, the opinion of the format, I don't want to harp on this forever, but I think the opinion of the format is also informed by the formats preceding it. And so what I mean by that is, we've been playing Pikarom for a year now. We've been playing playing Zacian variants for for half a year. We've been playing ADP variants for, almost a year. So it gets old, it gets Pikarom I've been playing for a year and a half actually.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, now that I think about it, time's really flown. So when you combine that, it also like paints your opinion of how things are currently.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So not to harp on that any
No, no,
further.
no, no, definitely not.
Alex Garcia also asking, Garbodor was really good for its time and really helped slow down the game. What killed it off? I think that's a really good observation. Garbodor definitely had a major impact on how people approached the game when it was released. What killed it off? The HP. The HP's got too high. Garbodor can't do that much damage anymore.
It almost like isn't physically possible for Garbodor to, like, you have to be doing something wrong.
You have to be really going crazy.
Yeah, for Garbodor to knock out an ADP,
Especially
for
in
Garbodor.
standard.
Yeah, exactly. Just, yeah, in expanded, there's still some Garbodor things floating around, but in standard, it just can't.
And like, obviously Garbodor is rotated in standard. Like I know that. I'm just saying, like, in the way the decks are built in standard, if there was an exact reprint of Garbodor, it wouldn't KO anything.
Sure. Yep. Exactly. Wallace says here, are you guys buying Darkness Ablaze cards? I think there's probably another set before tournaments are back. So are you buying any Darkness Ablaze cards, Riley?
Like physical cards?
Yeah.
Not at the moment. I feel like I'd rather just wait personally, just because I'm not going to be, even if physical events start, I'm not going to play in them until I think it is actually safe. And I don't think that'll be for a while in the United States.
I think that I will keep my eyes out to fullgripgames.com to see if they have any good deals. And if they do have good deals, I'll pick them up. But yeah, I mean, I kind of echo that sentiment, just like trying to figure out what it would mean to have these physical cards. And I think I would just buy them on special or on a deal, or if I had a discount, or if I had store credit or something to use up, but maybe not going out of my way to get, play sets of everything that I need, as I would for like a normal set. It feels weird, and it kind of just sucks to say, but again, without tabletop tournaments, it's tough to justify dumping, the money that you would normally dump into a new set in physical cards into that.
What I will be doing for sure is I will be buying Rowlet from the set, because I collect every single Rowlet. I'll be going to fullgripgames.com for that. And I will also be buying codes because I want to play online.
Yes.
And I know no better resource than fullgripcodes.com.
There you go. I think the codes are like going to explode, dude. I think we've already been seeing this like uptick in just general price of codes.
Expensive.
Yeah. The codes are absolutely insane. So I would 100% go to a site that you trust for that kind of stuff, because I could totally see like anyway, I never mind, forget that thought. Yeah, but so I would go to a website that you trust for codes, and and try to get those deals, because like it should just boost up and up and up. We've been seeing kind of general trend with every new set release that the codes go up, and they seem to get more expensive every single time.
Yeah. Waterman999 asking, do you think they will make the game more skill based? That is a tough question inherently. I think I think they will try. I think they will do what they can to introduce skillful archetypes, while also maintaining business interests and following the will of the player base. Like ultimately, like, if certain kinds of play styles and cards are what ends up selling well, then that's what they're going to develop to. So
sure.
Alex Garcia asking probably the perfect capstone question for the episode. Without IRL tournaments, which Beyblade do you think will dominate their current meta? JW, thoughts?
I gotta say the red one with the spikes for sure.
Yeah. Alex, I think it's going to be that I'm a big fan of the left-handed Beyblades. I'm a right-handed guy, but a left-handed blader.
So wait, do you hold it in the left hand and rip it with the right, or you rip it with the left and hold it in the right?
I forget, but I remember they were distinctly left-handed Beyblades. Alex Garcia told me this when I played with them. So okay, I think the left-handed blades are really poised to dominate the meta right now.
All right, well, only time will tell. So that is our episode, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. It turned out to be a way longer episode than we anticipated, which I feel like we always say.
Yeah, we're just really passionate. We get in the heat of discussion and we just keep talking. So like GW said, thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you all. Your continued support means so much to us. You have no idea, especially in this time. It is incredibly difficult to maintain the tempo of content while COVID is happening and there's no real life tournaments and physical card tournaments or physical cards aren't really a thing. So we're doing our best for you, and we appreciate that return sentiment to us. If you have any ideas about things that we should talk about or any general funny nuances that you want to give us, feel free to follow us at Tag Team Pokemon on Twitter and give us over a DM. We'd be happy to see what you all got. And if we see anything particularly funny or interesting, we might read it here on the cast.
Absolutely. Always looking for content.
Always. We're thirsty for it.
Very good. So I will be starting up the After Dark stream here in a second. Thank you guys all for watching. We are Tag Team. Follow us again on Twitter. You can watch the episode if you missed any of it. Catch us on all the platforms, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, or on my YouTube channel, Flex Daddy Righteous. I post the VOD from the cast the day after. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know it was a lot of fun to make, and I will be out of town next week, but we'll catch you on the next episode.
See you, everyone.
Bye.